All right, hi guys, I'm Tracy. Thank you for joining me today and welcome to today's video. So in today's video, I'm going to be answering the question of whether you need a big fluffy powder brush. And this is going to depend on your preferences and your needs. So I'm going to go over the 5 that I have, give you guys my opinions on each one, and then at the end I'll give you my honest, straightforward answer of whether I think you need one. Before we get started, please don't forget to subscribe before you leave. It really helps me out. It helps support the channel and will help me continue to do these videos. Okay, so with that, I'm going to start off with the first big fluffy powder brush of mine, and that is the Koyudo BP13. This is a very popular brush for good reason. For the price, you get a lot of brush. It's a very dense brush. The hairs are pretty long, and it's called a foundation brush, although I don't think, at least for me, did not work well for liquid and cream foundation. It's just not dense enough, but it was nice to do bronzer with, like a powder bronzer that you want to kind of get all over. Not good for like specific, bronzing, but if you want to kind of lightly warm up your face, or if you have a bronzer that's a little deep for you and you want to do a light dusting, I think this is a really good one. I personally don't use it. Before I forget, a lot of why I don't use a brush like this or some of the other ones I want to mention is I prefer a brush with darker hairs, because when I pick up a powder, so for me my powders are going to be lighter, it's easier for me to see how much powder is on that brush. For a color, a brush this color, it's going to be very hard for me to figure out how much powder is on there. Bronzer is a different story. I can tell how much bronzer I put on a brush like this. So, that's going to depend on your complexion, but that is behind a lot of why I'm not using certain brushes for powder. So I just wanted to put that out there. I've known that for a while, I just never brought it up. But anyhow, this one, I think it's a good brush for the price. I just don't use it for powder, so I'm not going to highly recommend it for that. The next one is the Hakuhodo 022. This is my very first fluffy powder brush, or fude powder brush, and I've mentioned this so many times. I simply don't use this brush. It is very sparse. The hairs are very long though, and it's very good for, it's kind of like the Koyudo if you have a darker bronzer that you want to put on very lightly, or you want to kind of get something all over the face. This is a good one. But for me, I prefer something a little denser, and also the hairs, the color, it's hard for me to figure out how much powder I'm using. So I do know some people that really like this one and that have multiples of this one. It's just, for me, I just don't really have use for this one, so that one I'm not going to recommend. The next one is the Chikuhodo GSN2. Now this is a powder brush, but I bought it for foundation. A lot of the reviews on the Beautylish website say they use this for liquid and cream foundation, and that is what I've used this for. I have on a few occasions used it for setting powder, and it does work really great for setting powder. So this is my second filming of this. In the first one, I did my finishing powder on this side of my face with this brush, and it came out great. It didn't move the makeup underneath, which I'm kind of surprised of because it's a very dense brush. So I wouldn't get this for finishing powder because I have 2 other brushes that I prefer over this one, and I don't use this because I have other foundation brushes that I like better. So this one I'm really not going to recommend unless you don't have a foundation brush and you're looking to order from Beautylish or something. But I do prefer, the Sonergy, and I don't know, I think I might even prefer this Koyudo Fupa 2. I am using this one over this one. So this one is a very good brush, but I think, simply I'm not using it. But that's because I have brushes that I prefer over this one. So that's the Chikuhodo. Now the largest brush I have is the Refer 22. Now I got this in PR, so I didn't actually buy this one. And this is typically not a size I would go for. I have heard Michelle Wong on a couple of occasions say this is her favorite powder bronzer brush. So in fact, I don't have powder bronzer on today. I'm gonna just try it out because she said so. I'm gonna use the Chantecaille Real Bronzer, and let's just see how this comes out. So yeah, you can really easily see how much bronzer you have on there. So yeah, this is also, it's so large, it's not going to be very specific. But let me see how it turns out. So yeah, I think that this does work really well with a powder bronzer, and especially this one. I think that really came out nice, very even, you know, not too dark, not too light. But for the price, this is a very, very good deal. When they sent it to me, it was on sale for $65, and normally it's $110. $65 for a brush of this quality with the hairs and the density of this brush, that's a very, very good deal. And even at $110, it's not overpriced. If you were to look at Hakuhodo for a brush of this size, I'm pretty sure it would probably be closer to $140 or something. So this one, I'm not gonna say I highly recommend it, but I do think for the price, it's worth looking into. It's just, this is my newest of the brushes I want to talk about today, so I do need a little bit more time on this one. But doing that bronzer, I think I really like the way it came out. But you know, because of the color of the hairs and because of the density of this brush, for me personally, I don't think it would be good for loose powder. Definitely not for loose powder. Maybe for a pressed powder, it could work, but I do think if you were to get this, bronzer is probably the better use of this brush. Okay, and then this one, I kind of wasn't sure if I was going to include it, but I am, because it's very similar to the Chikuhodo, and that's the Koyudo CD Japan Fupa 14. Now, I use this only for finishing powder, and in my previous filming, I used it on this side of my face, and I really do like the way this puts on finishing powder over all my other brushes because of the softness, and it just feels so luxurious. And this one also, considering it's gray squirrel hair and goat hair, but when you feel it, it feels more like a squirrel hair brush. And for the cost, this is a really great deal, and it's a very high quality brush. And of all my brushes for finishing powder, this is the one that I would reach for first. The other one I want to mention that is also a very, very good brush for finishing powder is the Sonia G Smooth Buffer. What makes this one really good is it fits into the corners of your face really well, especially like if you want to get this area powdered, which I'm always looking for. This one will do that better than this one because it's just too big. But just the experience of doing your finishing powder with this, I think makes this brush worth it. So I think that's pretty much what I want to cover for today. So my conclusion and my opinion is that you don't need a big fluffy powder brush. You can get the job done with other brushes. I recommend the Hakuhodo B13 over the other brushes that I talked about because it's more versatile. You can use it for powder, but because of the size, you can also use it to bronze, like bronzer. You can use it for blush. It fits, you know, in this area and in this area. So I use this one over the other brushes, even for powder. If I were to travel with it or something, I think this would be better for powder just because it's smaller. But that is my preference, to use a smaller brush for powder. And even I even often use the Sonia G Designer Pro, and I'll even use like a little brush like this to powder because the main areas I powder are right here, here, and here. Once in a while, you know, I'll powder everything, in which case this is not the best, but you know, for me, for my needs, a brush like this is a better use for powder than the other ones. And also the hairs are darker, so I can see the powder very well on a brush like this. So that's really all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye.